G'day. Welcome to a little presentation that we've put together that's a very, very relevant and very, very important subject at the moment. We at TradiePad, we're all about technology. We're all about helping businesses understand how to use technology, apps, software, devices to make running the business easier and more efficient and more effective. But unfortunately, that brings with it a little bit of vulnerability and the ability for nasty people to leverage the use of technology to try and hack into or affect people's businesses. So today's session is all about cybercrime and cyber criminals and cyber security. The goal of this session is all about awareness. It's educating you about what's out there so that you know how to defend yourself. So we'll get straight into it. I'm going to start with a bit of a story about one of our clients. Now, this was a text message that I received early one morning. You can see it was a Friday morning, 6:30. I was about to jump on the train to head into town, and my client messaged me, and he sent me this some screenshots of an email that he received. Now, this email, you can read on the screen there, it's referencing the fact that the person that's sending the email has the person's password. And they're referencing there that they put some malware onto the computer and recorded the client visiting a not so nice website and recording what they've done. And then the message goes on to talk about the fact that they've got access to your computer, they've downloaded all your contacts, they've accessed your social media, and if you don't pay them a ransom, they're going to distribute the video of you that they recorded using your webcam on your device or your computer. They'll distribute that to all of your contacts and all of your social media friends. So you've got to pay them a ransom into Bitcoin. Now, this is a complete hoax, absolute hoax, but it scares the living bejesus out of people because the first sentence there says, "I know your password." And in this instance, that was a password that this client had used in the past. And so it just freaks you out. You think, oh my God, they've got my password, they've got access to all my stuff. What do? I'm going to have to pay this ransom. So that's what they rely on. But little do you know that the way that they've got that password is through a publicly available website that has published usernames and passwords that have at some stage been compromised. So at some stage, someone has clicked on a phishing scam, a phishing email, which we're going to talk about today, and they have entered their username and password, which has then compromised those credentials. And these people that run these phishing scams, they then publish those usernames and passwords to publicly available websites. And so people like this that run these scams then take that data and they work out how to leverage that to get money out of people. So this is just an example of one of the tools that's out there, one of the many, many tools that's out there that these a-holes are using to try and get money from us and affect us. And so today is all about making you aware about those things. So a bit of a run through of the agenda today. We've got a lot to cover. So first of all, we'll do a bit of an intro and we'll have a talk about the goals for today. Then we'll go through knowing who these people are. Who are they? What do they do? Why are they doing it? So knowing the enemy. Then we'll look into how you can best defend yourself. And by knowing how to identify these things, and then look at the tools that we have available to add to our arsenal so that we can defend ourselves against these people. And then finally, we've got some action items, things that you can do, positive actions that you can take to decrease your vulnerability and the potential of you being affected by this stuff. So a bit of an intro first. I'm Clinton, obviously, from TradiePad. So TradiePad started as a training organisation, helping trades and mobile service businesses to understand how to use technology, job management systems, project management systems, setting up devices, setting up email platforms, setting up the technology to run these businesses. So naturally, that led us to become, I guess, the IT department for a lot of businesses. So whenever there was an issue, whenever there was a problem, whether it was something to do with the hardware or it was an issue, a hack or a suspicious looking email, we naturally became the go-to person. So we were kind of pushed into this role of being the cybersecurity consultant. So we've had lots and lots of clients over the years come to us where they've either been subject to a hacking, or they've identified something that wasn't quite right. So we've really kind of taken that role of being that IT or that cybersecurity specialist for a lot of businesses, and we've seen a lot of stuff over the years, a lot of different scams over the years. So today's session is all about educating you about what are the things that are out there, how are they going to try and attack me, and what am I going to do about it. So it's all about awareness. Knowledge is power. So if there's one thing that you walk away from after listening to this session today, it's I am now more aware of who and what is trying to attack me. Because in any kind of warfare, not knowing who you're fighting against, not knowing how they're going to attack you, really leaves you vulnerable. So today is all about awareness, and you as an individual, as the business owner, you are the best defense, and we're going to explore why that is the case. Now, there's going to be a number of technical terms that I'm going to throw around today, and I want to define those so that there's no assumptions about knowing what things are. So the first one is firewall. I'm going to talk about firewalls quite a lot today. And when I said before, you are the best defense, you are the first firewall. As a person, you are the person that is kind of the first line of defense against clicking on an email, or going to a web page, or opening up a file attached to an email, whatever it might be. So the definition of a firewall is software or firmware that enforces a set of rules about what data packets will be allowed to enter or leave a network. So a set of rules that controls the flow of information backwards and forwards. So typically a firewall is something that's on a computer that controls what can flow backwards and forwards, but humans are firewalls as well, and we're going to explore that a bit later on. So let's move into talking about knowing the enemy. Who are these people? There's a statement up there on the screen that from Interpol that just demonstrates the fact that these cyber criminals are absolutely exploding. They're everywhere. Cybercrime is the fastest growing area of crime. More and more criminals are exploiting the speed, convenience, and anonymity of the internet to commit a diverse range of criminal activities that know no borders, either physical or virtual. So it's not like people are coming as an individual that comes physically to your house and comes to break into your house. They are everywhere. They are all over the globe. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of public education about it. So we don't see, hacker TV. You don't see like Border Force or the DUI, the breath testing television that you see. So there's no real common education about what this is. So we don't see a lot of it, but it is absolutely everywhere. And there are a few different types. So this component is all about knowing who they are and what they do. So I like to break it into 3 levels and 3 different types. So the 3 different levels are consumers, hackers, and vendors. So the consumers are people are hackers who pay to play. They're the ones that have an agenda. They have a reason for wanting to put out a phishing scam or put out an attack on a piece of software or an attack on a network, but they don't necessarily have the skills to do it themselves. So they are a consumer. They pay someone to build it and launch it and run it. So there are a growing number of people out there that are prepared to pay money to have these hacks or these projects, as they are, put out there. The next level is hackers. They're the pure hackers. They're the ones that are actually writing the code, the ones that write the malicious code, the ones that launch the attacks. So they're the pure hackers that are out there, that are sitting behind the keyboards and actually smashing this stuff out and launching it. And then the next step up are the vendors, and they're the ones that are leveraging, I suppose, the fact that there are consumers out there that want to pay for this stuff. So it's kind of the next level of being a hacker is you become a vendor. A lot of times they're groups of people, and they are business people. They are having, I wouldn't say legitimate businesses, but they have a business around putting together these hacks or these scams and distributing it or providing it to the consumers for purchase and for distribution. So it's kind of it ramps up as we go along. And then the three different types of hackers, I guess it's a little bit of the goodies and the baddies. So there are white hats and there are black hats. So you might hear the term white hat around the internet. I had no idea what it meant before I started to explore it, but essentially the white hats are the goodies. They are the people who have the skills and have the capability to do hacking, whether it's writing software or it's hacking networks or whatever it might be, but they're ethical. A lot of times they are contracted by government agencies or by businesses to do things like penetration testing or testing security systems and running vulnerability assessments on software or on networks, so that the business owner or the government organization or whoever it is aware of the situation that they have and they can rectify it. So the white hats are the ones that are using their powers for good. Black hats, opposite end of the spectrum. They are the baddies. They're the ones that are using their skills and their knowledge and technology for bad purposes, for financial gain, for just breaking stuff, for just being a-holes, whatever it might be. But the black hats are the baddies. And then in between those, like everything in life, there's the grey area in between. So the grey hats sit in the middle. They're ones that will use their skills and their knowledge to identify issues and notify a government agency or notify a business about the fact that they've identified this vulnerability and say, we've found this thing and we can help you fix it if you pay us some money. So they're kind of good, but they're kind of bad because they're leveraging their knowledge and that skill for financial gain. It may not be to actually destroy something, but it is for a financial gain. And sometimes they might leverage or create the vulnerability to make a bit of money. So they kind of drift in between that white hat and black hat area. The profiling of the people that are doing this stuff is it's overwhelmingly young people. They are the kids have a lot of computer time now. They have a lot of time in front of the screen. It's very, very easy for them to develop their skills. It's really easy to access information. And some statistics on the screen there show that 61% of cybercriminals begin before the age of 16. And the average age of suspects and arrests on a recent report in the UK was the average age was 17 years. So they're young guys, and this really is, they are faceless crimes. One of the reports that I read showed a lot of comments and feedback from people that had been caught in the act of doing this stuff, and a lot of the feedback was, I didn't think it would affect anyone. I never saw anybody. It's a real faceless crime. The people that are doing this stuff don't know and they don't see the people that they're affecting, and so it's almost like they call it a Robin Hood syndrome, which is quite interesting. So now let's have a look at, because this is a faceless crime, let's have a look at what some of these people look like. These are a list of the current FBI's most wanted. So this is a guy, Alexei, who is, and again, I'll kind of highlight a couple of different variations with these hackers. This guy was a team player. So he was working conspiring with a group of Russian intelligence officers. So this is a pure hacker. He is a guy who actually writes the software. He wrote the malware, and he was committed for. He is wanted for wire fraud, which is defrauding or obtaining money using electronic or interstate communication tools. So phone, email, text messages, social media, and also for economic espionage. So economic espionage is a big one. That's kind of quite a way up. So unlawful targeting and theft of critical economic intelligence, such as trade secrets and intellectual property. So that's really getting up there in terms of seriousness. So he's got a reward out there for $100,000, and he's still at large. Next one we look at is, we don't really know where he is. He's Vietnamese, but they have no idea where he is. And this is a lone wolf. This is a guy who is working by himself, and he hacked some email service providers in the US, and he stole 1 billion email addresses. So he got access to 1 billion email addresses, and he then launched spam attacks on tens of millions of email addresses. So he was the one that was writing those kind of spam emails and just firing them out to tens of thousands of email addresses at once. And the whole idea of that is he was making money through commission of sales generated from internet traffic going to the websites that he was promoting, the specific products that he was promoting in the spam email attacks. So it wasn't like it was a phishing scam where it was trying to get your details. It was kind of funneling you off and spamming you to send you off to a website, and then he was making money off the commissions, or he is making money off the commissions on the sales that are generated. So bit of a sneaky one, but 1 billion email addresses, that's a lot of data. That's a lot of email addresses. Next guy, this guy is pretty nasty looking. That picture on the right hand side's not real nice, but he's another one located in Eastern Europe. He is a team player as well. He's working in with a whole group of people, and he was responsible for developing and installing a piece of malware, which I'll talk about malware later on, called Zeus, and it was all about stealing financial login details, and then using those login details for bank fraud and for taking money out of accounts. So it's reported that he's infected more than 1 million computers, and there's been over $100 million in financial losses. So he's been out there for over 10 years, and currently the reward is $3 million. So Evgeny, keep a lookout for him. He's worth trying to catch. And then this last guy, this guy, I don't know where he is, I don't know what the reward is, but I just wanted to include him because of his name, old Wang Dong. But he's also a team player. He was involved with a group of Chinese government people, and they were involved in state-sponsored espionage. So they were captured. Oh, sorry, they're located in the US and involved in trying to capture state secrets, that kind of stuff. But yeah, good name. And his alias there, one of his nicknames is Ugly Gorilla. I don't know why. He's a pretty looking bloke. And this last person, this one's really interesting. So this is not so much the most wanted because she was arrested only recently. So she was arrested in the United States, and she was responsible for conspiring to support ISIS. So she was involved in hacking websites and also in recruiting people to be working in with ISIS, and she's been convicted to 20 years of prison. So there was a I remember seeing a number of years ago a series of websites where the website got compromised and hacked, and there was a title page that was put up. So whenever you went to the website, the title page came up, and it was stating that this website's been hacked by ISIS, by Islamic State, and so they were using that method just to get the Islamic State message out there. It was a real interruption to businesses, but it was getting the Islamic State message front and center right across the globe. So she was busted. She's been chased for the last couple of years, and she was very, very unassuming. So she was a college student, 18-year-old college student. Her parents said that they had no idea that she had any kind of involvement in anything like this. They said her only hobby was computers, and she was just in front of the screen all the time. They had no idea what she was doing. She was all over social media. She's very, very unassuming. But she was responsible for a lot of these attacks that went on. She was part of what they call the Caliphate Cyber Army, where there's a whole bunch of people. So she's now in jail, 20 years in prison, but it just goes to show you don't know who these people are or what they look like. They can be a 15-year-old kid, they can be a pretty looking girl like this. They're absolutely everywhere. Now let's have a little bit of a look at why. Why are they doing this? What drives their behavior? Like I said before, a lot of these people think it's a real victimless crime. Some of the statements from the crime authority report that I mentioned before, I was driven by my curiosity. I wanted to understand the best modifications and cheats for Xbox, and this led to more serious stuff. There were so many others doing the same thing. I get a real bee in my bonnet trying to understand how things work. So these were young people that were captured and provided a statement about what kind of brought them into it. But some of the feedback or some of the reasons for doing this, a lot of them are driven by the fact that it's a challenge. You know, they're bored. They just want to do something. They're in front of the computer. They're sick of playing Xbox. They kind of sick of looking at the internet. What's the next thing that I can do with my skills? So it's a bit of fun, bit of a challenge. You know, there's a little bit of credibility that goes along with it. Then once they start to realize what they can do, there can be a bit of a financial gain. They can use this for financial purposes. Hacking for financial gain becomes a bit of a more of a reason, a more solid reason. Some people it's emotional, so it might be a revenge. There might be one of those consumers I was talking about before, where they've got an issue with somebody or a website or a piece of software, and they want to act on a bit of revenge. So it can be emotional, it can be revenge driven, but for a lot of people, it's ego driven. They're keyboard warriors. They're sitting behind the screen, and they may not be an outgoing person. A lot of them are introverted. So being able to do this stuff and have an impact on people and use their skills and their power to really affect somebody can be driven by ego. The next item, like the young lady that was captured just before, it can be political or religious reasons. They can be pushing a certain barrow for a political party or for a religion, and using their skills to get that message across. And this one's a little bit weird for me, but some people get a real kick out of it. It can be sexual or deviant urges affecting people and impacting their lives and affecting their businesses, gives them a buzz. Weirdos. But ultimately, it's because they can. It's because they know how to do this stuff. They know they have the skills to be able to do it. And for a lot of them, like I mentioned before, it's just kind of come out of nowhere. It's come out of being bored. So some of the other testimonials that came through from that report I was talking about before were with the anonymity. I thought I was invincible. I built up my computer world to be my main focus. It was an alternative to the real world. My mum was happy that I wasn't out on the streets all day and night. I didn't consider victims. You don't see the real people behind it. And the last one was money was not a motivation. I just wanted to use the tools to prank and joke around with people. So for a lot of them, it's very innocent, but it escalates so quickly. And one thing that was a real eye-opener for me was just how easily available the information is. This is a website you can go to called Hack Forums, and Hack Forums has streams and streams and streams of subjects of all sorts of stuff. It's really quite disturbing what's in there about how to hack Facebook, how to hack this particular type of software, how to build this, how to do that. So there's this forum out there that's just driving a lot of the knowledge about how to do this stuff and allowing kids to go out there and just find it. So I don't know why these forums and these websites don't get shut down, but they are out there and there's a lot of them. So we've had a look at who they are and what they do. Sorry, who they are and why they're doing it. Now let's look at what they do. So I've got four main types of what the different tools that they're using here. So the first one is quite innocent. A lot of people start at this level: piracy. So downloading music or downloading a video game or downloading a movie, whatever it might be, that's a form of hacking, I suppose, of piracy, of not paying for something, sharing it, and it starts to open up the knowledge of how the internet can be used for sharing and for illegal purposes. So from there, it moves into writing of software, writing of malware. So another little term that I'll define: malware is malicious software. It's a shortening of malicious software, And the definition is software that is specifically designed to disrupt, damage, or gain unauthorized access to a computer system. So a lot of the younger kids will start to develop or write this malicious software that starts out, can be quite innocent, can be what they call a PUP, so potentially unwanted programs. So those are the things that pop up on your screen that are annoying, the things that install themselves automatically, like the little browser bars or the search bar tools that appear and kind of hijack Google Chrome or Google Search. So those things are potentially unwanted, but they're not really too bad. They're just a pain in the ass. They're just annoying. So basic malware. And from there, it escalates up into scamming, fraud, extortion. And we're going to have a real deep dive into that one. So that's starting to get into more serious motives around why and actions and motivations and consequences of what these tools are going to do. It starts getting into the financial reasons and maybe even the revenge reasons. So we're going to go into that one quite deep. And then the real serious stuff is getting into that cyber terrorism. Cyber terrorism, state-sponsored espionage, where government agencies are backing this stuff or groups are backing it so that larger targets are being attacked for whatever the gain might be, whether it's accessing information or it's affecting an entire country. So that's the real serious stuff. But the stuff that affects small business is that scamming, fraud, and extortion. Those are the things that we need to be worried about. That's the stuff that has potential impacts on our businesses and our lives. So we're going to go into that one in a bit of detail. Now, we start with phishing. Now, phishing is a method of scam which can be delivered via email, phone, text message, social media. The primary delivery method is email. So there's phishing scams that come via email where you get a request that says, I've sent you a file, or you've got to click here to download this thing, and you click on it and it takes you to a page where it asks you to sign in with your credentials. So it might look quite harmless, it might look legitimate, whether it's Google or it might be Office 365 or whatever it is, but it's a scam. And it's trying to do is access your username and password. So it's attempting to get you to compromise your login details so that those login details can then be used for whatever the purpose might be. So unfortunately, they are preying on people that don't understand, preying on the weak and the uneducated that don't know that these things are not legitimate. And they are absolutely everywhere. I'm going to go through a few examples of them a little bit later on, of just some of the crap that gets into my inbox, gets straight into my spam, goes straight through my spam filter. But the stuff that's coming out there is absolutely unbelievable. They are everywhere. And then the phishing scams then lead to what's called a business email compromise. So if you get an email that says, click on this thing and enter your username and password, typically that's the username and password for your email account. So then that leads to your business email being compromised. And that's where those people, the hackers, have been able to access your email, and they can log in and they can start to observe you, and they can start to use the access to your email for purposes of communication, or there's a term up there, spoofing. So not spoofing, spoofing. And spoofing is the act of disguising a communication from an unknown source as being from a known or trusted source. So this is becoming very, very prevalent. We have a number of clients where this business email compromise has occurred. One of my clients I was talking to recently, reasonably large company based here in Sydney, office in Melbourne, setting up offices offshore, and the CEO's email was compromised. They accessed his account and they sent emails from his email address to the CFO saying, or actually they observed his email for a while first, and they realized that they were in the process of setting up an office offshore. And so they sent emails to the CFO. He sent an email to the CFO, or they sent on his behalf to the CFO saying, I want you to transfer this amount of money into this bank account, which was tied in with the discussions that they'd been having. So they'd been in there and they were watching what was going on, and then they put together a plan and they sent the email off to the CFO. CFO received this email from the boss, and it said, transfer this money. So they transferred the money. They realised that transfer had occurred, and obviously it's gone into the hacker's bank account. So they realised that the transfer had occurred, and so they went, well, let's try again. So they sent another email and they said, okay, let's transfer a smaller amount into this same bank account. Transferred that smaller amount, so that went through. 100 grand ended up being. And in the next meeting, the CFO had with the CEO, their CFO said, we're going to have to adjust our cash flow forecasts to allow for that money that we transferred to the offshore bank accounts. And the CEO said, what are you talking about? What money? And then that's where they realised that this had occurred. And so they got a little bit of the money back, but it just goes to show you that an innocent phishing scam can lead to situations like this, where your business email gets compromised and payment requests get sent. We've got another client where their invoices were intercepted. So invoices were sent, and the hackers intercepted the invoice, changed the banking details on the PDF document on the invoice, and resent it to the client and said, just updating you, we've got a new bank account. Can you please pay this money into our new bank account? And so, of course, the customer is receiving this email from the person that had sent the invoice originally, and so of course they pay the money into the incorrect bank account. And a lot of times, the banks they don't want anything to do with this. And another recent client experience that we had, they had that invoice doctoring situation happen, and the bank kind of came to the party, but the police were absolutely useless. The case kind of got thrown from one person to another, and they kind of were working on it, and then the details got lost, and it was an absolute balls up. And so unfortunately the authorities, they don't know how to fight this stuff, and we are seeing it all the time. So it comes back to those phishing scams. It comes back to being aware of these phishing attempts that are out there and knowing how to not fall for them, because if you do, then that leads to this business email compromise. The next item, malware, serious malware. So not that potentially unwanted program that I was talking about before that's annoying. This is serious malware that can get in and attack your system, whether it's Windows or it's a Mac computer. There's a whole discussion around vulnerability of Windows versus vulnerability of Mac. So viruses and malicious software, and whether you should have virus software installed on your machine, that's a whole separate discussion. But mobile apps are very susceptible as well. Again, whole discussion around Apple iOS versus Android operating system. There is no doubt about it, the Apple operating system is more secure. It's more locked down. They are more vigilant when it comes to assessing software before it goes into the App Store. Whereas Android, the Google Play Store, there is so much malicious software in there, it's not funny. It's so easy to get an app into the Google Play Store, and there have been numerous accounts of, say, banking apps. Someone's written a malicious piece of software that looks like a banking app. They put it into the Google Play Store, people download it, they think it's the NAB app or the Commonwealth app or whatever it might be because it looks legit. They enter in their internet banking details and nothing happens. And they think, oh, something's wrong with the app, I can't log in. So they try again, put in the banking details, and all they're doing is just giving their login details, login credentials, straight to the people that have written the app. So that is very, very common in the Android store. There is malicious software, whereas Apple, there are a few, but it's very, very rare. So it's just one of the differences between the Apple mobile devices versus the Android mobile devices. Again, there's a whole discussion around that. People get a little bit, can get a bit funny about it, but it's something that needs to be assessed. And then the last item on that list is IoT, which stands for Internet of Things. There are so many connected devices out there now, connected fridges, connected air conditioning systems, even your lights can be connected to the internet. So Internet of Things is things that are connected to the internet that are all integrated and are all talking to each other. And they are all access points. So they are all points where a hacker can access your network, your home network or your business network, And so if your connected devices are vulnerable and are weak, hackers can use those to get into your network. So there was a story recently about there was an IoT doorbell and video like camera system for at a door, and people were leveraging that as an access point to then get onto a home network and access the computers that were on that network. So all these things that we don't necessarily think about but are there as potential leverage points for people to use. Then we get into supply chain attacks. Now this is where we can have data that's shared across multiple devices or multiple networks. A lot of people use supply chain attacks as a way of getting to a larger target. So as an example, a hacker will come into a small business as a way to get into a larger corporate business, because the small business has a trust. They have a level of trust with that larger corporate organization, and they might have connected networks or connected systems. So they leverage the vulnerabilities of the smaller businesses or the smaller player, get into their system, build the trust with the corporate or the larger player, and then access their network that way. So with all of these integrated systems that are out there nowadays, as an example, we've got Reese that's connected to Xero. We've got all of these different pieces of software and systems that are all connected and talking to each other. They can be used as kind of stepping stones to attack these supply chains. There was a story recently about a million Asus laptops that were shipped that had compromised software in the back end of them. So as soon as an update was done, it allowed access to that laptop. So there was 1 million of them that were shipped from the supplier with this vulnerability built into them. So that's a lot of vulnerability out there. And then the last one we'll look at is ransomware. So there was a lot of promotion or stories recently about CryptoLocker virus, where you click on a link in an email, and that launched this CryptoLocker virus that went onto your machine, went into your cloud-based storage systems, and locked up all of that data by by locking it up with an encryption, so that it applied an encryption to the data that could only be unlocked by the person. So they were then using that as a method of ransom, a method of demanding payment to unlock your data. And there was a lot of cases where businesses had to pay it. Their data got completely screwed, and they could do nothing with it unless it was unlocked. And so people had to pay these ransoms, these Bitcoin ransoms, to get their data back up and running, because otherwise their businesses shut down. That was very, very common. And there was another one recently, which was WannaCry, and it was a worm that infected millions and millions of computers. And there was one guy that found the key to that and shut it down, but it had the potential to be a absolutely global meltdown situation. Affected millions and millions of computers, and it just went on and on and on. So it was a worm that infected people's computers and shut down their networks. So that had massive consequences if it wasn't shut down. It was very interesting to see. So we've looked at who they are, why they do it, and what they do. Now, what can you do to defend yourself? Now, we say the best defense is a good offense. You need to have strategies in place to protect yourself against these people. You've got to be on the front foot with this. You've got to be on the offense rather than just letting this stuff come and attack you. So we've got three strategies. We've got three strategies and then one real key one. So the first one is passwords. I hear it all the time. I hate passwords. Bloody passwords. They're a nightmare. Unfortunately, they're here to stay. They're not going anywhere. There is some good development happening with facial recognition and thumbprint recognition and that kind of stuff, but passwords are still going to be around. The most important thing is never use the same username password combination. I hear it all the time. I always use the same password for all the websites. That is a massive, massive risk. Huge risk. Never use the same username and password combination on websites or on software, whatever it is, because if your data gets compromised, if you're like that bloke that I was talking about before, where he stole the credentials of a billion passwords, if that information gets out there and your credentials get published on a public website, your information, your login credentials, if it's the same thing that you use for all software and all passwords and all websites, if it's the same, then instantly people have got access to all of your stuff. So never use the same username and password combination. Put a bit of complexity into your passwords. Don't make it password 123. Don't make it your name. Don't make it your kids' names. Put a bit of complexity into it. Use some unique words. Use some capitals. Use some symbols, exclamation mark, colon, question mark, whatever it is. Put a bit of complexity into it. And it can be beneficial to use a password manager, something that's going to allow you to manage your usernames and passwords, because as you start creating more complexity and using different things, you can't remember them. But don't rely on your brain to remember this stuff for you. You can use tools. You can use a password manager to help you manage that stuff across your various devices, your laptop, your computer, your phone, your iPad, any of those things. And use a bit of length in your password as well. Interesting statistics on, we'll look at some interesting statistics later on length of password and the length of time that it takes to crack those passwords. Strategy number 2 is two-step authentication. This is something that people think is an absolute pain in the ass. It's being pushed more and more. So Xero now has two-step authentication requirements. They call it multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication. It is annoying, but it's very, very, very important. It adds a whole nother layer to your defense. So if your username and password gets compromised, so if you fall subject to a phishing scam where you then enter in your username and your password, if you've got two-step authentication in place, it means that the person who gets that username and password can attempt to use it to log into your system, but that will then fire off the authentication or request authentication from that extra layer of defense that person shouldn't have access to. If for some reason you've lost your phone and they have your username and password and they can unlock your phone, then potentially there's a case where they may get access to that two-step authentication code, but at this stage it's very, very unlikely that they'll be able to get that extra layer of unlocking through the two-step authentication. So it is critical. We enforce two-step authentication for all of our email accounts at TradiePad, and it has saved us in the past because it's easy to fall for these scams. So if two-step authentication is available, you have to use it. Use it. It's a pain in the ass, but it's an awesome tool. And then step number 3 is, or strategy number 3 is data encryption. So storing your business information in a container or in a method where your data is encrypted. So encryption means where your data gets broken up into millions and millions of pieces, and the only way to get it reassembled is through a username and password combination that unlocks that encryption and puts all of the pieces back together again. So any of the cloud-based storage tools have data encryption. Any of your banking websites have data encryption. But things like a server sitting in an office with all of your business information sitting on it, they are not generally encrypted. So if someone was able to hack your network and access your server and access all of the data that's on that server, it would be sitting there unlocked, unencrypted. So that is a risk because, like I said, with IoT devices, networks are becoming more and more vulnerable. People can access your business network. They can then get onto your server. They can then access all of your business data. So servers and old school kind of managed servers in offices, not necessarily the best option these days. There are whole discussions around on-site storage versus cloud storage and security. But when you store your data on the cloud with any of these main tools like Dropbox or Google Drive or OneDrive, your data is encrypted. When it's stored at rest, it's encrypted. When it's moving from between emails or it's being shared with somebody, when it's in transit, it's encrypted. And the only way to unlock it is through usernames and passwords. So it is really, really important for business data. And it's important you've got business grade systems, so business grade email, business grade storage. So you're using Dropbox for business or using Google Drive for business. You're not using the consumer level or the domestic level. You're using business grade, and I'll talk more about that later on. But the most important strategy, so strategy number 4, is us, what we call warmware. Warmware is people. So we talk about software, we talk about hardware, software being your applications and your programs, hardware being your phones and your computers and your iPads, but warmware is people. You are the first layer of defense. You are on the front line. You are a firewall. 91% of cyber attacks begin with phishing scams. So you are the one that makes the decision whether you open that email and whether you click on that link and whether you enter in your username and password. So you have to be the most powerful line of defense as possible. And the only way to do that is education. You've got to educate yourself and educate your team about what is out there and how it's trying to attack you so that you don't fall for these a-holes that are running these scams. And a really important thing within business is rewarding identification. If one of your workers makes the mistake of opening an email, clicking on a link, entering a username and password, they need to be confident to be able to bring that up. You don't want to come down on them like a ton of bricks and say, "You idiot, what did you do that for? You're fired," or whatever it might be. You don't want to knock it. You want to reward identification so that if it does happen, if someone in your business does it and compromises their data, you don't want them to go, "Oh shit, I'm not going to say anything because I'm going to get smacked around here." You want them to come to you and have the confidence to say, I think there's been a situation. We need to check on this. This is what I did. This is where it took me. This is what's happened. Because if that's happened, you need to act fast. You need to be prepared to change your passwords or do whatever needs to be done to rectify that situation. So your staff and your workers need to be comfortable and confident to be able to bring that up to you or to someone in the team so that you can fix it. Because sweeping it under the rug is not a method of defense. It's just sticking your head in the sand and saying, let's just wait and see what happens. I'll talk about it a little bit later on, but with those phishing scams that happen and the business email compromise that goes on, it can look like nothing has happened. When you compromise your username and password, nothing happens, and you go, "Oh, that's a bit weird," and you just go about your daily duties. So it can be very easy just to ignore it or just to say, "Oh, I'm fine, nothing's occurred." But in actual fact, you giving up that username and password is just the first step of the journey. And I'll talk about that later on. So what you want to do is educate yourself, educate your team so that you are aware of this stuff and you know when something's happened. You want to create, there's a website we'll look at later on, you want to create what they call fish detection ninjas. Hiya! So people that know, they know when they get an email, they know when it's a phishing scam. They're not stupid. They know, I'm not going to click on that one, and I'm even going to notify the team about the fact that this has come to me. Check this out. This is one that I just got from Energy Australia or from Google or from whoever it is. It looks ridiculous. It's not legit. Make everybody aware. We are the first firewall, the human firewall. We've got built-in artificial intelligence. We're really easy to update with education. So invest the time to educate yourself and your team. Now, let's move into what are the weapons, what are the tools that we can add to our arsenal to help us fight against this stuff and protect ourselves against this stuff that's going on. The first one, the most critical one, education, knowledge, and awareness. Keep yourself aware of what's out there. There are some things we're going to have a look at in a second that help you do that. You need to have some solid policies within your organization around usage of devices, around accessing networks, around what to do if there is a compromise. So make everybody aware of this stuff that's within your organization so that they know what to do and what not to do. Invest in yourself and invest in your staff. So spend the time, invest the money to educate yourself and your team, and you've got to be vigilant. This stuff is not going away. It's becoming more and more prevalent. So there's a really cool website that lets you check whether your email address has been compromised. It's called Have I Been Pwned? That Pwned is pronounced pwned. Have I been pwned? And pwned, just look it up, just Google it. It was a term that came about from an old computer game that was out there. Someone misspelled owned, and they put a P instead of an O, and it just got picked up as a bit of a term that gets bandied around by nerds like me. And so have I been pwned? You put your email address in there, and it will tell you whether or not your email address has been compromised or has been part of a data breach and is available on a public website. It's a bit of an eye-opener. I did my test. I showed up on 7 different data breaches. So my email address was shown in 7 different data breaches. Real eye-opener. Change your password straight away. If you are compromised, you can contact us and we can help out with making sure that that you defend yourself properly. This is a QR code. So if you point your phone at the screen with the camera on, so if you're on an Apple device and some Android devices, you just turn on your camera, point your camera at the screen so that the QR code is within the view of the camera, and your camera should identify that QR code, and it should prompt you to go to a website, and that website it'll take you to the Have I Been Pwned website, and you can put your email address in there. So if you want to do that now, you can pause this video, do the QR code thing, go to the website, put your email address in and see whether you've been compromised, and then go, oh shit, because it's very unlikely that it hasn't been compromised. It's a real eye-opener. Okay, our next item is, this is a really cool website which provides security awareness training. So these guys offer a free cybersecurity awareness course that you can sign up for. It's really cool. I've done it. It takes a bit of time. You've got to invest the time to learn to increase your awareness. But if you're prepared to do that, you're prepared to invest a bit of time and put some time into it, this is awesome. So again, we've got a QR code. Scan the QR code. So put your camera up to it. It will prompt you to launch your browser, Safari or Chrome or whatever you're using on your device, and it will take you to that website. And so you can create an account, enroll yourself in that cybersecurity awareness course, and then invest the time to go through it. Good for you, good for your staff. Really, really cool. The next website is ScamWatch. This is a website put out by the ACCC, so the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission. It's the ScamWatch website, which is scamwatch.gov.au. This will keep you up to date with all of the latest types of scams that are out there. It'll also allow you to report a scam, and there's a really cool thing on the screen over on the right there. There's a button for subscribe now. So you can subscribe, put in your details to subscribe to their newsletter, and they will keep you up to date with any of the latest scams that are out there. So it's a really good way of staying aware, being on top of what's out there. So that's a must do. I really, really recommend that one. Again, we've got the QR code for it. So scan that QR code. You can pause the video, scan it, go in there, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Okay, item number 2. We're getting close to the end now. So password management systems. Setting up two-step authentication. So these are 2 very, very, very important tools. So password management systems could be things like 1Password or LastPass. So they are third-party password management tools that you can have a free version of or you can pay for. So there are differences between them. I personally use 1Password because I've been using that from day one. I've been using it for years and years and years from when it was a real early startup. It's great. It's really improved. It allows you to access your passwords on your laptop and your phone and your iPad and your tablet, whatever you've got. So it gives me access to my passwords across my multiple devices. It stores my username, stores my password, stores the URL of the login page, and I can access that anywhere. LastPass is also very, very good. I think if I had my time again, I would probably go with LastPass. It seems to be a bit more advanced, but these things are always changing. It's the nature of the beast with cloud-based software. It's always evolving. So LastPass is very, very good. Either one of them, it doesn't matter. They're both very good. LastPass seems to have some better integrations and a bit more advanced technology. But then you've also got your password management tools that are built into your devices and are built into your web browsers. So Google Passwords is a good one. I use everything Google. We use G Suite, which I'm going to talk about later. But I've got a lot of my passwords saved through Google. So whenever I'm in Google Chrome, the browser, on my computer or on my phone or on my iPad, Google Passwords is there to prompt me with the passwords that I've got saved. But it only works on the Google apps. So it doesn't work in Safari. It doesn't work in Firefox. It doesn't work in any of the other apps that are on my devices. It's only for the Google tools. So it's great if you do all your work in Chrome and all your work in your Google apps, but anything outside of that, not so useful. Apple Keychain, same kind of thing. I've got Apple Keychain set up on my phone and my iPad and my laptop. So because I'm using all Apple devices, that works really well. So Keychain is available on all of those things. But again, it doesn't work in everything. And it's not as easily accessible as 1Password or LastPass. It's there as a storage tool, whereas 1Password and LastPass are there as storage, but also user interface to allow you to access and view and update the information, whereas Apple Keychain's a little bit harder to get into. So the old case of having the right tool to do the job, and the kind of worst case scenario would be use a notebook that you have access to, or using notes like a notes app on your phone, but make sure it's secure. Make sure that the note that you create, whether it's Apple Notes or Evernote or whatever it might be, make sure that the note that you create is secure with a username and a password. So you can lock notes nowadays. So make sure it's a secure app. Make sure it's a secure note. And any devices that you're using, make sure they've got a passcode on them. So if you've got an iPhone or an iPad or an Android phone, make sure that you've got a passcode on there, and the device needs to be unlocked for people to access it. Because if you lose your phone or you lose your iPad, and people can just unlock it without putting in a passcode, they've got full access to all of your information. They go straight into your email, they can go straight into your apps, they can go straight into your photos and your notes and your social media. It's your life, these devices nowadays, it's critical that you've got a password on there, a passcode. And then the real big one, I've screwed up the presentation there, but we've got a couple of slides. So we've got two-step authentication, and this is the big one that's been pushed by Xero nowadays. So Xero has made two-step authentication mandatory. You must use two-step authentication to be able to access Xero, and they've done that on purpose because it is financial data. And same with Apple, they've made your Apple ID and your iCloud account mandatory with two-step authentication because, again, it's got your life. You're storing your life in there. There's the different password management tools. So there's LastPass, there's 1Password, there's Google Passwords on there, there's Apple Keychain in the bottom right corner. So they're all the tools that we've got available to us. Now this real big one, business grade email. This one is something that you can act on straight away. If you're using a consumer grade email address, Big Pond, Hotmail, whatever it might be, Yahoo, they're not the best option when it comes to security. They're not the best option when it comes to professionalism. So having a professional grade, business grade email address is critical from a business professionalism perspective, but also from a security perspective. So there's really two main players. There's G Suite and there's Office 365. G Suite and Office 365 offer very, very, very similar functionality. It's like the old Holden versus Ford situation. They've even got similar looking icons. They both manage your email. They both have document control. They both have spreadsheets. They've both got storage. They've both got presentation capabilities through Keynote, through PowerPoint or through Google Slides. So they are really much of a muchness, but they're both amazing tools. G Suite's pure cloud. It's been running online since day one, whereas Office 365 is a bit more focused for those that are in front of a computer or a laptop throughout the day, and are really entrenched with the Office suite of products of Word or Excel or Outlook. G Suite's a bit more mobile driven, really simple to use apps on phones and iPads. We find it's great for trades because it's really easy to use and really cost effective and really, really user friendly. Whereas Office is more powerful. There's more power in Excel, there's more power in Word, there's a bit more power in Outlook. But if you don't need that stuff, then what's the point? Keep it simple. But it's horses for courses. It's finding the right tool to suit the business. But the important part is that they both have absolute top-level security. They both have two-step authentication. They both have the ability to control and manage your email accounts across your organization. So it's about setting up your email and communication tools at organization level, at business level, so that you can manage them. Google, we use G Suite. This is a couple of examples of some of the tools that Google G Suite has provided for us. This was an email that I received. I didn't even know that this tool existed. This is Google notifying me that one of the email addresses associated with our organization, the password had been leaked. So this is notifying that the password had been shown on a publicly posted list of compromised credentials. So this was one of our team that had fallen for a phishing scam and had put in their username and password, and this is Google alerting me that that had happened. So that is a really cool tool. Now, luckily we had two-step authentication. We have two-step authentication mandatory across the organization, so this was not a problem for us. But if we didn't have two-step authentication, this would have been a major, major drama. So really important you've got two-step, but this is a really cool tool that Google provides that will alert you when something like this has occurred. Some examples of some dodgy emails. So this is a screenshot of my spam box with G Suite. So Google is really, really good at filtering out the bad shit from the good shit. Now these are all spam. This is all hacking. This is all potential phishing scams. So there's stuff there from Office Works, overdue invoices. There's something from the bloody tax file number. There's some bird there, Sophia, who wants to give me $8 million worth of gold. There's stuff from Telstra. These are all illegitimate potentially hacking, phishing scam emails. So Google is really, really good at filtering this stuff out and putting it into the spam box. This is an email from Officeworks showing an overdue invoice. So it shows that Google has picked it up as spam. And the thing there is an invoice number. You click on the invoice number, it's going to take you to a page that asks you to put in your username and password to access the data. Obviously, it's not legit. Another one there from Telstra. Google's telling me it's dangerous. So similar messages were used to steal people's personal information. Don't click on any links. Don't download any attachments. So Google is telling me, G Suite's telling me that this stuff is bad. And this was scary. This is one that's coming from, looks like it's coming from ASIC. It's got ASIC branding on it. It looks really, really similar to other ASIC emails I've received. And it's telling me that they're in the process of cancelling my business registration. So that's a little bit of an alarming statement. So there's an intent to cancel letter there. I click on that, takes me to a website, might launch some software. It might ask me for a username and password, but it is not legitimate. But the main thing that identifies that is you look at the email address it's come from. It's been spoofed. It says that it's coming from ASIC messaging service, but look at the email address, bex.smith@gearpound.com. I don't think ASIC would be sending from something called GearPound. So one strategy is to always check the email address that your emails are coming from. Another one's the notification about domain name being cancelled or renewed. So I get these domain name emails all the time. These people, this isn't necessarily a phishing scam or a hacking scam, but it's a scam nonetheless, where people they have the ability to see when your domain name, your website domain name, is due for registration, and they will send you an email and they'll say, you need to renew your domain name. And you think, oh, well, that's legit. I do need to renew my domain name. Click on the link, go to a page, enter in your credit card details, pay the money to renew your domain. It's got nothing to do with your domain. It is not legit. So your domain name registration is with whoever you registered with originally, and anyone else that sends you communication about it is not legitimate. So do not fall for those. If you ever hesitate, if you've ever got a suspicion, ask your IT person. Ask whoever it is that looks after it for you. If you don't have an IT person, call us. That's what we do. That's what we're here for. Righto. It's been a long session. Very long session. But hopefully I've given you knowledge and information to be able to be aware and defend yourself. Now the ball is in your court. Here are some action items. We're going to give you access to a document that outlines these things in detail as well. So educate yourself. Spend the time to educate yourself, educate your team about who these people are, what they're doing, and how they're trying to attack you. You've done a great step of watching this session. Share this session with your team, whatever it might be. Educate yourself. Number 2 is passwords. Make sure your passwords are as secure as possible. They have complexity in them. Make them more than 8 characters. So the difference between an 8-character password and a 16-character password, an 8-character password can be cracked within about 2 or 3 minutes by password cracking software. A 16-character password goes into the thousands of years to be cracked. So big difference between 8 and 16 characters. So make your passwords as long as you can. It increases the length of time that it takes for the password to be cracked. 2-step authentication, absolutely critical. Make sure you've got that set up with your passwords. Secure emails. Make sure you're on business grade email. If you're not, if you're on a traditional server-based email system, if you're on a Gmail address or a Hotmail address or a Big Pond address, change it. You have to move to having business grade email. Absolutely critical. If you need help with it, that's what we're here for. That's what we specialize in. We can help you with it. And the last item, do your updates. If you're on Windows machines, this is absolutely critical. Make sure you update. The updates carry patches. They carry updates for known security breaches or known security issues within your operating system. So it is absolutely critical that you update your machines, whether it's Mac, whether it's Windows, it doesn't matter. Mac is less likely to have compromises because of the way that they work, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Still do your updates. They give you new stuff. They give you better tools. It's silly not to do the updates, but same with your mobile devices. iPhones, iPads, Android phones, Android tablets, Androids, it's probably even more critical that you do your updates because the people that are out there that are writing this malicious software will find vulnerabilities in the older operating systems. The new operating systems that come out fix those vulnerabilities. So do your updates, update your devices. If you need any help with any of this stuff, reach out to us. That's what we're here for. TradiePad.com.au. You can contact us 1300 651 900. We are here to help. We are your technology support team. We are the IT team for tradies. Chief Nerdy Pants signing off.